James Cameron really is Hollywood's most lovable egomaniac. Say what you will about him, but he did make the first $100 million movie, and Titanic, and Terminator 2, and Aliens, and the highest grossing movie of all time, all while leading the charge to completely revolutionize filmmaking tech into the way movies are watched and made. It's just true. He's one of the greatest and most successful blockbuster filmmakers of all time for a reason, and yes, he has changed the game yet again with Avatar: The Way of Water. We will talk about the visuals, hopefully not in a very redundant way, and of course we will talk about the story, because that's the interesting part. That's like the big mystery. Early reactions came out and they were like, Avatar: The Way of Water is so visually cutting edge, it saved my marriage. The next person to doubt James Cameron will be hanged in the town square. And everyone was like, cool, but why are you talking about the story? And there was an interesting vibe in the air after my screening. There were no claps when it ended, which kind of surprised me, and I did hear murmurs of people being underwhelmed by the story, and I'm not saying that to be alarmist, but I think it's interesting because I am appreciating the story more the further removed I am from it, because it's so massive. This movie is 3 hours and 10 minutes long that it's difficult to see the whole picture while you're in it. So I want to talk about that because Cameron does go way bigger, way more ambitious, way more emotional. There are new characters, more characters. It's centering characters that you might not expect. So this is a movie that I am definitely going to see again. I'm happy to see again so that I can process that story even more, connect with it even more, and because early screenings were in 3D and I was way too close to the screen to be watching a movie in 3D. It ended up being mostly fine, but when I got there, I was like, this is about to be the worst 3 hours of my life, not only because I was worried about my seat, but because I was a little skeptical. I haven't seen anything in 3D since I was a kid. I didn't even know if I was gonna like it, but guys, it's so awesome. It's not like it was a decade ago where it was mostly for the novelty of things popping out at you. Like, it feels like VR. It feels like you're literally sitting right there with them. Future! It's incredible, which is why I think such a unique movie-going experience shouldn't be missed in 3D, unless I guess it makes you nauseous or something, which is totally fair. But if it doesn't, trust me, just give it a go. I would not be selling it like this if I didn't think it was all that in a bag of chips. And what I enjoyed most about that immersive visual experience was this sense of purity and childlike wonder that it brings, more so than the first film, particularly in the middle of the film when it basically just becomes like a hangout nature documentary, which is complemented by an awesome score by Simon Franklin, which is just as good as Horner's while incorporating some of Horner's original work as well, which was lovely. In this one, they travel to stay with this water tribe, hence the title. They have to learn the way of water, James Cameron's specialty. And what Cameron and his team are able to create is literally mind-boggling. All of the creature design is just so cool. They have constellations on their skin. There's bioluminescence everywhere. It's euphoric. And Cameron is a completionist with his world building, just intent on showing us every single possibility of life on Pandora. And he obviously plans to continue exploring that and doing it with such detail. I mean, you can see the particles in the water and the dust in the air, and it's dynamic and thoughtful imagery too. There's different skies, different weather. The world is so fully realized. I mean, it's only happened to me a couple times that a movie has made me cry, not because of the events that are happening, but because it's creating such a powerful and beautiful experience and imagery that it just overwhelms you, and this did that for me. I was worried the reactions were hyperbolic, but they're not, especially when it comes to the underwater sequences. And again, they completely revolutionized motion capture technology. Don't forget that everything that happens in these movies, the actors are actually doing. They have to be swimming, looking in the right places, doing the correct actions, and giving a good performance. I feel like it's easy to feel like this movie just popped up out of nowhere since it's been 13 years since the first film, but they've been working on this tech and bringing this world to life the entire time. I will say that the only thing I wasn't over the moon about visually was the high frame rate. And there are screenings you can find where you can opt out of that. Basically, not all the time, but frequently Cameron uses 48 FPS, especially during action sequences, and it kind of gives it that motion smoothing effect that makes it feel a little bit like a video game cutscene. Some people love it, some people hate it. I lean more negative on it because it is noticeable, and what I like most about the movement is that it feels so natural and real, and then the high frame rate to me is just a little uncanny valley, but it does add to that wholly unique experience, so to each their own. But you get the point. It looks really nice, once in a lifetime movie-going experience, yada yada yada. Let's get into the story because I feel like it's easy to give it less credit than it deserves, especially after one watch. There's There's definitely going to be a lot of what even was the plot, or it's redundant, Cameron's dialogue is still weak. My biggest lasting problem with the story is just how much is in it, which tale as old as time, and that's usually something that I personally don't take well to when like subsequent sequels in a franchise feel like they get more and more bloated as they go along. And while it is its own story, it also feels like setup. Cameron obviously has a massive arc in mind for this world. I mean, he's already written the script up until at least the 4th or 5th movie, and that's why I say this warrants a second viewing, because the more I think about it, the more I see the whole picture and see Cameron's vision and how everything intertwines, because nothing in this story is random. And at first I was disappointed to see that Jake and Neytiri actually take a huge backseat in this film. Especially Neytiri made me bummed because I love her so much, but this movie is actually really about their kids. So be ready for that. I eventually came around to it in a big way. I think it was a great decision by Cameron. They have this blended family of human and Avatar and Na'vi. Everyone loves Spider. Basically the only human in the film for the majority of the runtime, so props to him. But the character that I found most compelling was Sigourney Weaver's Kiri. She has this connection to Awa that is so magical and mysterious, and all the other kids are calling her a freak, and it turns out that she has this really powerful thing about her. I think that's going to be a lot of people's favorite part. She was awesome. It takes some getting used to hearing Sigourney Weaver voice a teenage girl. It sounds like she's trying to voice a little girl, but it was kind of oddly charming to me. I overall love this recycling of characters into different forms and the lines being blurred between biological and found family. It like perfectly reflects these themes that are also from the first film of borrowed energy and how we're all connected to each other. That's also represented in a really cool way with the water setting when they connect to plants with their hair thing and look like babies in a womb. Powerful stuff. And it's also really strongly about outcasts and fathers and sons and family on top of all these larger, arguably heavier themes that Cameron introduced in the first film. Someone commented on Twitter that I shouldn't have used escapist to describe this movie, and to fair, some of it is though. I mean, you're watching blue human proxies explore an underwater paradise. I certainly felt escaped. But Cameron is of course also using these films as a very pretty Trojan horse for an anti-imperialist, anti-war, and pro-environment message. Matt Lynch called it Cameron's Princess Mononoke. I don't know if I'd go that far, but the sentiment is worth considering. They do talk to whales. There is some whale drama, and it's awesome. One of my favorite parts, but also one of the most powerful. And the messaging is still very overt, but that's not something that bothers me at all. People will still have a problem with some of the dialogue in Cameron's writing, but I actually find that Cameron's cornier writing fits almost best with Avatar. I don't know, maybe just because it's so earnest and ultimately simple because it's trying to appeal to such a broad audience. And that's another reason why I love the messaging with the kids, who by the way reminded me so much of the kids from House of the Dragon. You have these kids from different tribes who are bickering most of the time, just making sly comments, making fun of each other's looks. Some of the kids have demon human hands. But the conflict also gets very serious and tense, which creates a lot of really great moments. I really think the middle of the film is where it truly soars, besides the fact that there's like 30 minutes of just hanging out underwater, which I literally loved. But in the beginning, there's a lot of exposition thrown at you, so I think a lot of people are gonna feel like it takes a while to get going. You kind of get context for where the kids came from, their family, what has become of Pandora over the last X amount of years. Then in the third act, you get this climax, which is yet another massive Cameron spectacle, and it actually happened at a time when I wasn't expecting it, and I feel like at first I felt really exhausted by the massive explosions and action. But once it starts to zero in on the character moments, especially in this very Titanic-esque sequence, it creates some of the best moments in the film. I cried a couple times. Not a lot, but like tears were forming. And so to track back what I said my issue was, it's long, there's a lot in here. I liked everything that Cameron did. I just, with some of it, I wish there was a little bit more time for it to be fleshed out. And so we'll see if I feel differently when I get to see it again. And I'm guessing one of the biggest deterrents for people to rush out and see this right away is the runtime of 3 hours and 10 minutes. Honestly, I did not feel the runtime beyond what's inherent to a movie that long. Maybe your back starts to hurt. But what I like probably most about James Cameron as a blockbuster filmmaker is that he understands what the general audience wants to see. He understands what's important to the story, and he just cuts the rest. His films are somehow very long, but also very efficient, and though he's stuffing a lot into this one, he makes sure that every moment has purpose, so I don't think that the pacing is going to be a huge complaint here. You know how long it is, You're locked in, ready for the experience, and especially with how astounding the visuals are, you like barely notice how much time has gone by. There's also this big question of whether it's better than the first film. I am a purist. I almost always prefer the simpler, more symbolic story, and I'm tempted to say that conceptually I prefer the story of the first one more, but there is literally no denying that this one is bigger, more complex. It is more of an awe-inspiring visual spectacle, obviously, just because the tech has advanced so much over the last more than a decade. So it's gonna come down to personal preference. I feel like maybe on a second watch, I will prefer the sequel for both story and visuals. At the end of the day, you don't have to think that James Cameron is a master storyteller, but I think that anyone can appreciate that he is a master filmmaker in his own way. He likes tech, he likes spectacle, he likes to make the masses feel something and give them an experience that they can't get anywhere else. That is the biggest draw to see these films, and the prevailing attitude seems to be, what's so wrong with that? It's not Marvel. It's gonna let me pretend I'm somewhere else for 3 hours and to get lost in the world of a real filmmaker with a real vision. And for that, I'd say we're pretty lucky because it was looking pretty bleak not too long ago. But because of its stunning technical achievements and a good story with a ton of character and heart, and it still uses papyrus font.
It was tribal yet futuristic.
Papyrus!
I'm going to give Avatar: The Way of Water 4 out of 5 stars. Let me know your thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water, guys. Do you plan on checking it out? Are you a skeptic? Will you be attending the skeptics hanging in the town square? Once you've seen it, let me know which film you prefer. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.